everyone. Welcome back to the Earth on Survival Guide, the podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, and game masters. With your questers, Josh and Dan, I'm Dan.
I am Josh.
And on today's podcast, we will be discussing all things architectural and structural, because we're going to talk about the actual fortress of the city of Skypoint. And so if you have any questions for us, please drop us a line at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. And we're just going to dive right in here because we started late because the internet was down. Damn it.
Internet was having problems. Dan and I actually haven't talked to each other in a while. And
I'm finally healthy.
Gestures broadly at the world being on fire and
yes,
needing to talk about stuff and me gushing about Expedition 33 for half an hour.
Yes, absolutely.
Which, if you are into computer RPGs at all, particularly of the like JRPG style, you may be aware this game won a bunch of awards.
Rightfully so, I hear.
Rightfully so. All I will say is it is very French. It's got a bunch of themes and stuff, art style and everything that just speaks to my soul on such a deep level. For those who aren't aware, I actually did live in Paris, technically just outside of Paris in a town called Vanves. From like when I was about 11 or 12 years old.
Yeah.
Great age to be in Europe.
Yeah.
Like just in general, like, you know, there are certain awakenings that happen around that age, and being in Paris as opposed to central Massachusetts, which is where I otherwise grew up, that had a big influence on me. It is a fantastic game. It is so good. Yeah, that's all I will say. Otherwise, I will gush for like another half hour.
Absolutely so. Just to equate your upbringing with my upbringing, I was born and raised in Hennepin County, Minnesota for the first 4 years of my life. So, Minnesota strong. Anyway, on to the city of Skypoint. This is a fortress that is 800 feet in the air. That's tall, I'm told.
Yeah.
That's how height works. I meant to look up other things that are 800 feet tall, but I didn't actually get around to that point, so we can figure that. Josh can look that up right now real quick. So adding to the city of Skypoint, its infamy are the degenerate slavers who roam far and wide from Vrontok, which is below Skypoint. So we're going to talk mostly about Skypoint today. We might get to Vrontok, but this is mostly, like I said, architectural and structural. So at the end of this, we're going to tell you exactly the 4th edition update to Skypoint, because we're talking 4th edition stuff mostly. Skypoint was founded or settled in 212 Thrall by the first Theran Empire. So this is, 1,300 years ago? By 309, so roughly not quite 100 years later, Thera began converting this to a military airship base. And 15 miles south of the city of this is located, so the city of Skypoint is located 15 miles southwest of the city of Yvain and across the Flamewalk River. So it's a good distance away from Yvain itself, but we're taking this approach of we're new to the Yvain province, and Josh and I, being your taxi driver/tour guides, we are telling you what you're going to notice once you cross the mountains or circumnavigate the mountains and get into the deeper hearts of Yvain's province. This structure is probably going to be one of the first things you're going to see, because it is, again, 800 feet in the air. How tall is the Statue of Liberty?
Yeah.
Do we know?
First off, a lot of the stuff that I have been finding in my quick Googles here is giving heights in meters, which meant I had to convert to meters really quick. So 800 feet is 243.84 meters. So about 250 meters. To give a sense, this first thing that I found is the heights of buildings that are no longer around. So like these are buildings that have been destroyed. The former JP Morgan Chase headquarters in New York City, which was torn down in 1960, was 215 meters.
So this is taller than that.
Yeah.
I'm going to round up and go 244 meters. So we'll go with that.
The Sears Tower, now known as the Willis Tower in Chicago, is 1,300 feet. The observation deck is 1,300 feet above street level.
Yeah. So this will go about 2/3 of the way up.
Statue of Liberty is small, honestly,
yes,
by comparison.
I was going to something readily available.
The Statue of Liberty is only 300 feet from the ground to the tip of the torch. So that's including the pedestal that she is standing on.
Yes.
The statue itself is only 151 feet. So the Statue of Liberty would be dwarfed by Sky Point.
Oh,
just to give you a sense.
By what, 6 times?
All of the pictures that you tend to see of the Statue of Liberty make it seem more impressive than it is in terms of height.
Agreed.
Simply because it is out in the middle of New York Harbor and there's nothing around to provide context.
Yeah, it's isolated.
Right.
Yeah.
I was in New York City a couple of years ago and did a walk down at Battery Park, which is right on the water.
Yes. So I saw the pictures.
Just a little bit further down from One World Trade, right, where the towers used to be.
Yes.
You can see the statue from Battery Park. Like, that's where the ferry out to the island leaves from Battery Park. But the statue, like, doesn't like dominate the horizon.
No.
It's like kind of just out there. All of the pictures of it are taken close to the statue, with the New York City skyline is actually quite a ways behind it. So it ends up looking like, again, out of context.
Yes.
Rather more impressive. So anyway, continue.
So what else do we have that's 800 feet tall? Did you find anything?
I was just kind of looking here. The Empire State Building is 1,250 feet tall.
Okay. So this would be about 3/4 of that.
So it's a little bit taller.
Yeah.
Again, it is a very large, very impressive structure, particularly within the context of the fantasy setting that is Barsave.
Yes. Yeah.
A skyscraper, which is what this is essentially, is not something that you typically associate with the kind of fantasy architecture that you see. I mean, Sky Point is not the only actually impressive architectural thing around. The Gates of Thrall are massive as well.
Yes.
There are some very significant architectural wonders, but certainly within the context of where it is located, Sky Point towers above everything that is nearby. There's not really much of anything, even in Vivane City itself, that would come close to that. Things don't tend to be built high. The reason the Gates of Thrall are able to be as large as they are is because they are carved into the side of a mountain.
Yes.
The fact that Sky Point is a freestanding structure of that size is actually rather impressive. And we will find out more about this, I guess. I'm just wondering about like the area that it takes up, not only from a heights perspective, but from a footprint perspective, how much ground area it takes up in terms of that. And like, how would that compare to modern day skyscrapers and such?
Agreed. Fair. So since this is only 15 miles southwest of the city of Vivane, you might be able to spot part of Sky Point from Vivane City, 15 miles away. Depends upon where you are, if you're on a hill or something like that. I'm not good with the sight lines, I'm not going to lie. So construction of the 6 columns of Sky Point took roughly 50 years. Now, why 6, you ask? There's one in the dead center, and the other 5 form a pentangle around it.
To get a little bit closer, the New York Times building, the headquarters of the New York Times, is 721 feet.
Cool.
So that's about the size. That's a little bit lower than the Chrysler building in New York. Yeah. So there you go.
Because roughly every 10 feet would be a story. So it's roughly, very roughly. Don't hold me to this.
That's up to like the top floor. If you include like the antennas and stuff at the top, it's like 1,000.
Yeah. So I'm thinking maybe it's an 80-story building.
If you picture the New York City skyline, it's not among the tallest buildings there, but it's certainly one that stands up above the average skyline of New York City.
It would be noticeable at 80 stories or so.
Yeah, it would certainly, especially, again, given the geographical context of the area. The New York Times building doesn't particularly stand out in New York City because there are a bunch of other really tall buildings nearby.
Yes, absolutely.
But when you're talking about an 800-foot tall skyscraper fortress in the plains, in the wilderness plains of Barsave, or Vivane technically, but in, southwestern Barsave, that's going to stand out. That's going to be visible from quite a ways away.
Yeah, considering it's between, by no less than 50 miles or so, mountains to the northeast, my map was upside down in my head, mountains to the northeast, and then a smaller mountain range again to the southwest. So it's like dead center, almost, between those mountain ranges. So you have all this flat ground, and then this six gigantic skyscrapers all huddled together. Again, one centrally located, and there's 5 more around them in a ring, the pentangle there. And this was built over the course of about 50 years, all while being raided by local scorchers. And the stone wall surrounding Vrontok suffered unrelenting assaults by said scorchers. Eventually, that wall made construction easier because it kind of held off the raiding parties. It will do that. So the wall still stands around Vrontok at its base, which encapsulates and encompasses all of the pillars themselves. During the Scourge, the inhabitants of Sky Point and Vrontok all took shelter in the Vivane Citadel, 15 miles away, leaving Sky Point completely deserted. So it must have been a really interesting sight to behold a couple hundred years after, when the Scourge is over, and a whole different generation of people come out, and there's Sky Point 15 miles away. So just putting that in your brain there for a little nugget. After the Scourge, the Therans made Sky Point the spearhead of their slave runs and the resubjugation efforts towards Barsave. So this was their launching off point. A, high, really hard to assail. B, it's got a wall around the base of it, again, hard to assail. And C, this was their midway point between Thera and Barsave itself. So might as well this is your way station. Resupply, reinvigorate, go. Launch everything from here. It's a quick flight with your airships from Sky Point into Barsave versus the 2 or 3 times as long journey from Thera itself. So especially, this is where they launched their efforts, especially after Barsave burned 3 vedettes at Sky Point itself. So some assaults did happen there. Thrall fought back admirably in this case. And so 3 vedettes, I don't remember if it was all at the same time or 3 in turn, were all laid waste at Sky Point themselves as a little act of defiance. So for about 50 years, Sky Point was the hub of Imperial presence for seizing slaves and mining magical elements, fending off crystal raiders, Barsavian airships. This was a happening joint. Thoughts?
Nothing really to add, no. It's a good location, just in terms of, general travel. Communities spring up around water on rivers and stuff is very common. That's where Vivane is on a river.
Yeah.
Being where it is, again, sort of as a good stopping point between Great Thera itself and Barsave, certainly would have been something worthwhile in terms of the trade that was going on at that time. And Sky Point can be sort of likened to a military base that is outside of a city.
Mm-hmm.
The Theran naval detachment that is assigned to Vivane/Barsave is not going to be based at Vivane itself, at the city. It's going to be based at the military post that is across the river and sort of nearby.
Fair. Yeah. I think it's architecturally is kind of cool the way they built this whole thing up. So here's the structural part of the city of Sky Point and the fortress that it is. So here, just talking about the pillars and the platforms. The platform itself, where people can walk on, that's roughly 2,000 feet across.
There we go.
Yeah, 2,000 feet across. It's 70 feet thick because, again, below this is all air. So you've got roughly 730 feet of air between the bottom of the platform and the ground itself, or Vrontok, take your pick. The pillars themselves, this is the fun part, because the 4th edition update goes to how this happened. There are 6 pillars, as I said, 1 in the center. The other 5 form a pentangle around it. And they're 800 feet tall above ground. there's roughly 150 feet, because you have to have structure under your bedrock. There's roughly 150 feet buried below that. So each of these pillars in total is 950 feet tall, with 150 feet buried. And then each one of these is 300 feet in diameter. So 300 feet at one end of the platform, 300 feet at the other end of the platform. Basically, there's 1,400 feet between the insides of each pillar until you get to the center ring. And the center ring's a whole different thing. So then there is, for structural sake, there are hollow parts of this column of these pillars. So you've got 20 feet of solid stone, then 50 feet of hollowed out column, which if you did a cross section of would look like an asterisk. The asterisk would be the empty space, and you go from there. So roughly, you've got 10 levels of solid stone and 11 levels of hollow asterisk. So you've got 170 feet, because you have 150 below ground, 20 feet above that is solid, then 50 feet hollow, 20 feet solid, 50 feet hollow, 20 feet solid, all the way up to counting 870 feet total. So just, yeah.
Okay, so because I want to try and put things into perspective here.
By all means.
To try and give people an idea of the size. We were talking about height, and I had said approximately like how much ground area, how much of a footprint does this have? And again, because much of New York City, especially in Manhattan, is very linearly gridded out.
Yes.
The average size of a New York City block is about 264 feet by 900 feet.
Oh, wow.
So if we're talking about a platform, circular, okay, we're going to say, that's 2,000 feet across, that is, if you include like the streets between it, 2 Manhattan City blocks the long way.
Yep.
And then like probably 7 or 8 the short way. I pulled up the map here.
Yeah.
The Empire State Building itself, it looks like the footprint for the Empire State is only half of a city block.
Okay.
To give you an idea, like we think of the Empire State Building as a large building. It is because it is very tall, but it does not cover, it doesn't have the footprint.
So we're talking 2 the long way and 7. I'll go conservative and go 7 the short way. So the 2 times 7 is 14. So we're talking 28.
So to kind of put it in, I'm going to guess an approximate scale here. And again, this is rough. Yeah. Well, this is just me like glancing really quickly at Google Maps and counting blocks and stuff like that.
We're ballparking all of this.
This is absolutely ballparking it. Roughly speaking, I would put the footprint of Sky Point at about the same coverage as the big lake in the middle of Central Park.
Oh, wow. That's pretty big.
Yeah, like not quite, but that's sort of getting into Central Park is like 3 blocks wide widthwise.
Yeah.
And it's super long, so it's well longer than that. But the lake is like almost 3/4 of the way across that width. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 10 blocks short ways long, counting along 5th Avenue.
Yeah.
It's a little bit larger, but Sky Point would just about cover the footprint of that big lake that's in the middle of Central Park.
Fair. I was going to take a look. Yeah.
If you pull up a Google map and you zoom out of Manhattan a little bit, Central Park is really easy to notice because it's the massive park that is in the middle of Manhattan. And then there is a really big lake almost right in the middle of it. It's next to the Guggenheim Museum.
Okay. I just figured something out. I'm slow in the uptake over here as well. So each of these pillars is 300 feet in diameter. That is an NFL football field, end zone to end zone. That is the playing field.
End zone,
not including the end zone. It's 120. So this is exactly as thick as an NFL football field per pillar.
Well, the length of a football field.
Yes.
Because the field itself is, I think, only like 40 yards wide?
53.
Oh, is it a little wider than that?
Yeah.
Okay. It's like 2 football fields side by side.
So put 2 football fields side by side.
2 NFL football fields side by
And that's
side.
what you've got for just the footprint of each pillar. And then you've got 6 of those pillars, again, one centrally located. And then as you go up, the first, from the ground height up, because nobody cares about below ground, the first 20 feet is all solid stone. Then you get 50 feet of hollow stone, again, in the shape of an asterisk. And then you go from there. So roughly, like I said, 10 or 11 levels of each all the way up. So there are arching supports that join each column together to the platform. And above the platform, each pillar becomes a tower, each having a cannons and barracks for the garrison. So everybody is stationed in these towers as the pillars go up above the platform. So the platform is 800 feet in the air. Towers go a little taller than that. Not sure exactly how high, but they go that high. So the Skypoint platform is roughly pentagon shaped. It's a rounded pentagon, not quite unlike a sand dollar. If you've ever seen the ocean creature, the sand dollar. It has 5 outer pillars and 1 central pillar. So the supports arch between pillars in a pentangle. Again, my favorite word of this entire essay. And this took 4 years of engineering to work out the math on how it's going to support itself. It's going to be supported. It's going to be safe, and all the stuff can work. Each side, from pillar to pillar, going around, not through, is roughly 1,500 feet in this rounded angle. Did the math myself on that one. So the platform being 70 feet thick, made of magically strengthened stone in a honeycomb fashion. And I could imagine, honestly enough, that if you take dodecahedrons, your simple little 12-sided die, and blocks like mechanically interlocked supramolecular polyhedra found in some DNA connections, and I had to go look that one up actually, that if you just take 12-siders and fit them together naturally, there's very few gaps or spaces in between them. So they are super strong that way. They would make a very sturdy structure in all 3 dimensions, vertically, horizontally, and side to side. But this is all magically and physically joined together. Thoughts on the engineering there, Josh?
It is impressive. It is Theran. In a very similar way that Parlength was conceived of and designed to be a demonstration of our wealth and power, the fact that the Therans, much like the behemoths and the Keelas, the basically flying castles that they have, are a demonstration of their magical might, we have enough magical power to flip the bird to the laws of physics and the laws of magic, essentially. Yeah, the fact that they have the know-how from an engineering standpoint and a construction standpoint and a magical standpoint to be able to make this multi-city block skyscraper-sized edifice out in the middle of a field. Yeah, I mean, it's not in the middle of nowhere, but this massive demonstration of might and wealth and power. It's impressive the way that an aircraft carrier is impressive. It is just a massive edifice demonstrating the might and power of those who built it.
I think that by placing Skypoint there, they took nowhere and made it somewhere.
Yeah.
But seriously, I had to go look this one up because when I was reading this essay and imagining this in my head, I had come across an article many, many years ago where they found some building blocks of DNA literally looked like 12-sided dice. And so the phrase to go look for is mechanically interlocked supramolecular polyhedra in DNA, in case you want to go pause the show and go look that up and see that I'm not crazy. So there is no access to the interior of this platform. It is solid all the way through. There's no running pipes. There's no air conditioning tubes. There's no nothing. So the northernmost pillar tower is basically a large shed for your airship repair. So in case anyone's going to run an adventure here and use it what they want to before 4th edition, this is how things are laid out. The southwestern pillar, because again, these are 5 pillars, so basically draw your 5-pointed star, Captain America's shield. Your southwestern pillar tower is your slave pens. Okay? Then the southeastern tower is your Sky Point Palace. This is your fortified tower, nexus of the 2 sides of the buildings along the edge there. So this is what you've got for those things. There is a narrow walkway around 2 edges of the platform that has a 3-foot stone wall topped with 10 feet of woven cord netting, aka your chain link fence on your highway overpass type thing. And that is from the eastern tower all the way down to the southwestern tower. So it kind of goes around the clock face, if you wanted to look at it that way, from 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock, something like that. This is better for takeoff and landing with the wind up at this height, 800 feet in the air. And the northeastern edge has no barrier. Sorry, that's what's good for takeoff and landings for it. So that between 1 and 3 o'clock, between noon and 3 o'clock on your clock face, this is where they would take off because there's no edge there. There's no barrier. There is, however, a fall net. So in case somebody does get swept off of the edge of this thing with high winds, they will be caught. And this is the one facing basically Carafod and Barsave. So this is where they were launching on purpose to that area. Were they launching somewhere else or they had other places to go to? Probably the launch pad would be in a different spot. So inside each pillar, there are some elemental elevators. These are kind of like the pneumatic bank tubes. You know, if you remember drive up your bank and this little tube would come out and you put your check in there and your deposit slip and you put it back in the pneumatic tube. That's how these elevators work. There's this constant column of elemental air.
We're old, Dan. We know what those are. These kids today.
Yeah, Gen Z hasn't created anything nearly as cool as that. And I will die on that hill. So
they've created cooler stuff. It's just different. That's fine.
So these are formed of elemental earth and air inside. There are 24 tubes, groups of 4 on the east pillar, the southwest pillar, and the southeast pillars. 4 up tubes and 4 down tubes on each of the 3 pillars. And the tubes are only one way. They do not work like an escalator where you can reverse the polarity. I'm kidding. They only go up, they only go down. Unless there's an elementalist of Thera to change the direction, but really that takes some reattuning and so forth. These all go from Vrontok to the towers. So if you're going to go to Vrontok at all, if you can pass the wall and you're let in, if you want to go up, you can go up. You want to come back down, you can come back down. So there is a crystal-lined door, and each shaft can fit 4 people. So if you have a party larger than that, you're going to take 2 trips or 2 different columns. So any thoughts on the construction of the elevators or anything else I may have missed?
Well, I'd just like to point out that if you kind of take all of this into account, the fact that the platform is so high in the air, the fact that the only access to it is either by airship or up through the actually rather limited access of the elemental elevators, this is actually a pretty secure fortress, especially when you consider the cannons and the general airship might of the Therans themselves. And with this platform being pretty high up in the air, it will have a pretty good view of anybody that might be trying to come close. And with the number of ships and whatnot that are there, sneaking into this place is going to be very, very difficult.
No lie. This is your Mission Impossible I can't say jailbreak, but infiltration, bank heist type thing. So you'd have to be disguised as a Theran or somehow pretend to be a slave or whatnot and get into Vrontok that way, get up these tubes, or somehow commandeer an airship that can get that high. And they can all get that high more than likely, but
you'd be talking about an operation in some regards that is similar to the rebel infiltration of the Forest Moon of Endor in Return of the Jedi. That's the level of operation that you would be talking about here in order to infiltrate Sky Point. There would be a lot of planning, lot of bribery or logistics. It's not something that you are casually going to do because you didn't mention it, but the elevators, the elemental elevators, are guarded. They're not just going to let anybody go up and down those.
Hadn't quite gotten to that part yet.
And again, like I said, any airships that are approaching better be displaying Theran colors. A traditional Drakkar or Barsavian airship, like a galley or something like that has a very different profile. I imagine that there may be some that go to Vivane for trade, but those would probably not be able to approach Skypoint itself without being intercepted.
Yeah. I mean, there's no air traffic control and there's no telephone to say, hey, you're in our airspace. But I also know that I also suspect that Thera would just, hey, that ship's flying too close. Launch a couple of Drakkars out there to go tell them up close and personal to, divert your path, or you will be fired upon by our cannons.
I imagine would probably be a couple of vedettes flying patrols in the airspace around there rather than, they're getting close, let's launch something.
Yeah.
They would already have stuff in the air.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because you're probably reading ahead and I may not have taken notes on this. There's either a vedette or a Keela eternally parked in the air around Skypoint.
It's a Keela.
Thank you. I forget which one it was.
The vedettes are the Theran equivalents of the Drakkars. Those are the smaller vessels.
Okay. Yes.
Typically used for mining, true element mining, but there are also combat vedettes.
Yeah.
Those are the Drakkar equivalents. The Keela is the small building.
Yeah.
And yes, there is a Keela. It's the Overgovernor's, I think, personal Keela.
That was the one I couldn't remember. Yes.
I forget what the name of it is offhand. I'm not bothering to look that up.
You're fine. I took these notes like 3 weeks ago and then I got sick. So I had it in my head. I was like, oh, cool. I'll do this. This is in my head from like the day before, because I always study the day before we record the podcast. And then, of course, I got sick twice. And it's been a few weeks, so it's not in my head anymore, but I was pretty sure there was a floating building parked just outside of Skypoint at all times. And so they would be very protective of that airspace. And I think that this place looked impenetrable and darn near indestructible. Now, do we give people the 4th edition update as to what happened?
If people have been listening to the show, they've heard the 4th edition update.
But it's been a few hundred episodes.
Yeah. So at the tail end of the Second Theran War, the Second Theran War sort of had two notable offensive phases of it from the Barsavian point of view. The first of those was the assault on the Triumph, on the behemoth that was landed on the shore of Lake Ban. And then the second phase of that was the attack on Skypoint. Skypoint and Vivane, but primarily the Barsavian forces attacked Skypoint with the airship fleets of Thrall and the support from the Crystal Raiders and what other airships that they could get sort of mustered from other powers that were contributing forces. The ground troops were a significant Thrallic force backed up by Carafad cavalry, primarily. But long story short, Skypoint, the fortress, was brought down when Nedin's flagship, the galleon that was his flagship in the attack, got damaged and steered towards one of the pillars and collided with it. This very large airship that strikes one of the structural supports and damages it and causes enough damage that what ends up happening is the other vessels start focusing their own fire and attacks onto it to weaken it further, to basically structurally undermine the entire thing. And while it is well engineered, when you've got something that massive and you cut away one portion of its structural support, that is that much more stress that is placed on the other structural supports, that it then doesn't take much more effort to cause them to collapse. And essentially the entire massive platform of stone and everything collapses, crushing Vrontok, the town below it. And anybody that hadn't managed to get off of the platform before it collapsed pretty much all died. If they didn't die right away, they died slowly and painfully, probably within the rubble of whatever was left. And unfortunately, the vast majority of those that died were slaves and lower class folks in Vrontok.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what happened. A lot of this talking about Skypoint is really interesting from a pre-Second War. Also very impressive in terms of the size of the ruins and what the condition of the ruins would be. Unlike Parlength, where you've got ruins that are essentially, it is still a city. It's just overgrown and some of the buildings are damaged, but you've still got laneways and streets and cellars and things like that. Skypoint is much more just a massive pile of rock.
Stone.
Imagine, essentially, if you look at what remained after the towers collapsed, the twin towers of the World Trade Center, if you look at what was remained sort of behind after that happened, that's the kind of type of devastation and damage and ruin that is kind of there now.
Because I can imagine that the galleon that hit the central pillar, because that way...
I never thought that. The central pillar, because of the other pillars around it, would probably have been harder to get to. Sure. Yes, the central pillar is important. If you were to picture, most tables have 4 legs, not 5 with a central thing. But if you have a table, like a card table or something like that, and you take one of the legs and you fold it up so it's no longer there, you don't really put any pressure on it. The table will still be able to stand, but it doesn't take much effort at that point to tip it over or to cause problems. Like, it was designed and engineered to be a certain way that even with its magical reinforcement of the stone is supposed to manage the forces that are on it in a particular way. And those forces are distributed evenly amongst the 5 external pillars as well as the central one. But if you remove one of those 5 pillars, that is stress and strain.
And it breaks the magical pattern.
Well, I'm not even talking about it from a magical standpoint. I'm talking about it purely from an engineering standpoint, okay? I mean, we had, like, a few years ago, there was the barge that crashed into the bridge in Baltimore, right? The barge hit one of the stanchions of the bridge, and the bridge collapsed.
Damn thing, yes.
The whole damn bridge. And so, if you think about it, even setting aside the central pillar, you've got the 5 pillars that are supporting the outer edge. Each of them has 1/5, or is supporting 1/5 of the mass, the forces that are bearing down on there. If you remove one of those, now each of those additional pillars, one has to support 20% more rather than 5 pillars. Now you've got 4 supporting the same weight. So each of them now need to support 20% more. I think that's the number.
They go from 20% each to 24 to 25% each. Yes.
Right. So each of them, but 5% of the 20 is 1/4. So they're like each. So like, And not only that, those forces are no longer balanced.
Yes. Now they're leaning one direction, and that stress.
Right. That's the other thing, is because the 2 that are closer to the missing pillar are actually going to end up being supporting more, because they have to make up for all of that extra weight that's being, all that essentially torque, that sort of twisting force that's going to happen, because that unsupported end is going to want to sink, and that's going to put even more stress on the others. Once you get forces kind of acting out of balance like that, precarious. Yeah, it's very precarious. And like, yes, the bottom section, but again, a good chunk of the pillars themselves are hollow with structural reinforcements. It's not like they're solid stone all the way through.
The point I made is I think the galleon hit that hollow part, because you had a 50-50 chance.
Well, yeah, like you hit the upper part, the hollow part, and like even if all you do with that is break away sort of the outer shell to a certain extent, well, then you start bombarding the reinforcement on the inside with fire cannons and elemental magic. It might seem impressive on the one hand, but as we saw, when they flew a plane into the top of the World Trade Center, the relative sizes of things, those buildings still came down. They were not engineered
for that
to deal with the forces that were involved there. And once things start getting out of balance, you just get a cascading collapse.
I mean, they could have made Sky Point 200 feet tall instead of 800 feet tall. And now that you have these really tall, spindly legs that are every 50 feet or so hollow, it's a little more precarious than they suspected.
Even in the grand scheme of things, I don't think whether it's 200 or 800 feet would have made a difference. It might have been easier for them to have the support pillars be reinforced so that they aren't as vulnerable. But in the grand scheme of things, if you throw a battleship at a building... If you chuck a battleship at the Empire State Building, the Empire State Building is going to go down. Or not even a battleship, like a destroyer.
Agreed. So, it was a collision.
Again, you don't need to take the whole thing down. You just need to take down enough to cause the physical forces on the structure to go out of whack, to cause everything to just catastrophically fail.
I just wanted to... I didn't know how to envision it in my head as to which one it took out, but thank you for illuminating that for the rest of us, the way you saw it as well.
I don't think I actually detailed to that extent, but I always considered it to be one of the exterior pillars.
Which also makes more sense. It's just easier to get to that.
Because it would be easier to crash into and easier for
especially if your galleon is failing in the first place, you wouldn't want to navigate between two pillars and kind of aim for the middle one. So, no, cool. I appreciate you laying out the vision of how that battle took place and the structural Anyway, it's late and we're done. So, any other thoughts on the building of Sky Point? Yes, it's impressive. They put it out, there, and it's the show. It's the objectification of Theran might and beauty, because this thing does look beautiful if you take a look at any of the art involved in that. And then, of course, we'll get to Theran talk and its underbelly later on. But otherwise, any final thoughts on the building of Sky Point? Or
no.
Destruction of Sky Point?
I hope we have impressed upon our listeners with our comparisons and scale and discussions here how impressive, par length is kind of impressive.
It is.
I think Sky Point is even more impressive from a certain standpoint because of what it was designed to be. Par length was intended to be a city.
Yes.
And impressive in its own right in that way. Sky Point is intended to be a military base.
Fortress.
Yeah, a fortress, a military base, as opposed to the wealth and culture of Thera, which is what Par length was kind of, I think, intended to represent. Yeah. Here is a demonstration of our wealth and our culture and our civilization.
Yeah.
That cultural imperialism. Sky Point is very much and if you don't accept our cultural imperialism, we are more than happy to put the boot to your neck with our demonstration of military might. Yeah. I was kind of scanning ahead really quickly and looking at the info on the fleet that is there. More than 24 airships, among them 12 combat vedettes, 12 more designed for elemental mining, and 2 larger Keelas, plus the Overgovernor's Keela.
Oh yeah, they're there.
Not to mention the additional ships that are not stationed there, but are traveling in and out for slave trade and supplies and all sorts of various other stuff. It is very difficult if you are running a period of time where it is still standing. Imagine the equivalent to trying to break into a military base.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the watch and protections that are going to be available there. Hey, our Shadowrun players, this would be a very, very high risk, very difficult infiltration to pull off. Magic can certainly help the situation, but access is limited and very highly controlled. So It is not something you will casually break into.
No, I love the fact that Skypoint was ever around in the first place. It's still some of my absolute favorite artwork for just the box set in and of itself. I would love to have that piece hanging on my wall, but I couldn't afford it when it went on eBay. So until next time, folks, go find a pentangle for your legend.
Good night, everybody.